Hello, everyone. Welcome to Sunday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com, and presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. If you're watching, of course, you can see our new backdrop there. Shout out to the folks at Christian Aro, Pat James, are kind of the guys that work in the background here at D1 Baseball doing stuff like this. Putting that backdrop together looks pretty cool, and we are, of course, very excited to be partnered with Academy Sports and Outdoors, not just on Weekend Waypoints, but a whole bunch of stuff, podcasts and some written stuff that's going to be showing up here during the regular season. Really, really excited to be partnered with them, especially for this guy who grew up on the Gulf Coast, right in the Academy Sports and Outdoors footprint, and spent many a day perusing the aisles there. So cool partnership for us at D1 Baseball. All right, let's get to the Saturday around the SEC. A busy day again. A lot of blowouts, which I think is, from an SEC standpoint, from those fan bases standpoint, a good thing. After maybe some close shaves, maybe some games that didn't quite go according to plan. Things shifted a little bit on Saturday, and we had a lot of blowouts, which didn't make for the most compelling baseball, but does get some teams back on track. So we will talk about that as the show goes on. We always start off with our game of the day, and for me, that is Georgia 7, UNCW 3. I was there, so a little bit biased on this one, but it had and Wes Johnson said this after the game, and I totally agree with him. It had a regional atmosphere to it. Some of that is, UNCW and their fans were up for this game. They wanted a shot at Georgia, and the capacity of Brooks Field is something like 3,500. It was bursting at the seams because they have, in addition to the stands, they have like a little beer garden, and they have a hill behind left field, and so it's kind of hard to know exactly how many you're working with there, but it doesn't always look as many because they're spread out. But it was a big crowd, and it was a big time atmosphere, and it was a tight game throughout most of it. Georgia pulled away a little bit late, but the 7-3 score doesn't totally capture how close that game was. One of my big takeaways for Georgia, something I'm going to be looking for moving forward, is that Brian Curley was awesome. The VCU reliever, the VCU transfer reliever. He was a really nice piece for VCU the last couple of years, but he was, he'd go back and get a 96 every once in a while if he was really, if he was really cooking. He touched 100 yesterday, and the first pitches out of his hand were like 98, and so he's got a little bit of a different delivery. He's got a hesitation hitch. It's like part Johnny Cueto with like the hesitation piece. But then also a little bit of Hideo Nomo in terms of just like the delivery part. If you remember Hideo Nomo, or maybe Daisuke Matsuzaka more recently, it's an interesting deal. And Wes Johnson told me they added that in the fall. That's new for him after he arrived at Georgia, and they just feel like it helps him gather himself better before he delivers. And he's a strong guy. He's shorter, so he has a low center of gravity relative to some other pitchers who are 6'4", 6'5". I don't even know if he's listed at 6 foot. And if he's listed at 6 foot, he might not be that tall, but it's a low center of gravity. He's got really strong legs, strong core. So balance isn't a problem. If it's a taller guy, maybe a taller, skinnier guy, it starts to wobble a little bit there when he's on 1 foot, but it wasn't a problem for Brian Curley. And so I'm looking forward to seeing more of him this season, because man, that was electric. So big win for Georgia. That's going to be a quality win that I think ages pretty well. It was a tough day for UNCW. They also lost to Quinnipiac in the nightcap, but Georgia can kind of empathize with that because Quinnipiac stuck with Georgia yesterday. So Quinnipiac was clearly, after getting blown off the field twice on Friday, Quinnipiac just decided, we're getting a win today. And it almost happened against Georgia and did happen against UNCW. So they play again today. We'll have a little bit more on that later in the show. So that was my game of the day. A fun one there. Let's clean up some comments here on X. Chinook Seedery, Sunflower Seeds, one of our other partners here at D1 Baseball, says, just glad the weather seems to be holding for most of the country. Didn't look great earlier in the week. Yeah, I agree. I mean, some teams have moved some things around to make things work. That happened here in Wilmington. Kentucky took yesterday off against Lipscomb. They've got the finale of that series today. So, some moving pieces. We had some double headers yesterday, or excuse me, Friday. But yeah, it looks like the weather has held pretty well, and it looks like we're going to get most every game in, and that's obviously a good thing there. Carl Dunn on YouTube says, "Good morning. Got the job done again yesterday." That's true. LSU just taking care of business, and I said that on Baton Rouge radio last week when they asked me, "What are you looking for in this series?" When obviously Purdue Fort Wayne is going to be overmatched, and I said, honestly, you just want, from an LSU standpoint, for them to come out and just not mess around, like not play with their food, come out and just take control from the jump and make it not interesting, and in a good way from an LSU fan perspective, not interesting. And they've done that through 2 games. Chase Shore's in the mound today for LSU. Hope to make it down to BR. I would love to get down to Baton Rouge again. It's tough because Mark Etheridge lives just a few hours away from Baton Rouge, and so it's an easier trip for him. And then frankly, Kendall, living in Houston isn't all that far away. So for me, having to get on a plane, it's a little bit tougher. But I would love to. I really enjoyed my time down in Baton Rouge in the 2023 postseason. As I watched LSU on their way to a national title. That was a heck of a lot of fun. I was treated very well in Baton Rouge that weekend, so I'd love to get back down there. Not an SEC comment here, but Chinook also says George Mason and ECU, sneaky good and interesting series. Yeah, that was Mason was up 3-0 in that game yesterday, and ECU came back to win it. And part of that's just that Greenville magic, that Clark LeClaire magic. That's a tough place to play if you're a road team. And although Evansville did just fine last year in the regional, but anyway, that was it is a sneaky good one there. Sean Miller, hi Sean, good to see you this morning. What did Jekyll and Hyde first 2 days for Nebraska? Yeah, got blown off the field by Irvine in the opener, but then beat Vanderbilt yesterday. I believe it was 6-4. Good on Vandy for playing big early games, but that was rough. Yeah, and Nebraska's just good. Ethan McIlvain was not very good. I didn't see the start. I'll have to go back and watch a video later, but the numbers aren't great. It was a little bit. I heard from someone who was there that it was a little bit of spray in the ball, like the command wasn't quite there. So we'll see. Obviously plenty of time to clean stuff up, but wasn't a great first start for him. And Nebraska gets a win, which is big. If Nebraska is going to build an at-large resume in the Big Ten, which isn't as easy to do as in some other leagues, because there are going to be some teams with pretty rough RPIs in the Big Ten. There typically are. So you need to bank some good wins early. That will certainly qualify as one. Mizzou with a big win over UConn. Yeah. Speaking of teams that bounce back, Mizzou blown out by Penn State in the opener. And then, came back and beat a UConn team that, is just going to be in a regional. We can just go ahead and put that in pin. I mean, that's just the way UConn rolls. But yeah, that's a big win for Mizzou. And, I talked to some folks that saw them, one of whom was Aaron Fitt, my colleague who's down there. And I believe wrote about Mizzou. I haven't checked this morning, but he came away kind of impressed. Was like, they got some good athletes. Like, obviously they're undermanned relative to the rest of the SEC, but it's not like they got nothing. So I'm interested to kind of read what Aaron wrote and get a look for myself later in the season. Sean mentions it too. Nice bounce back win for Mizzou over Fitz fighting UConn Huskies though. Yeah, Aaron a big UConn. Maybe it's the New England in him. Aaron born and raised in Massachusetts. Maybe that's why he takes up for the New England team. Chinook Cedary comes back with, what's your favorite flavor? I'm a dill pickle guy. I like that tartness. So that's but plenty of good options there. I'm also a fan of the sweetness, the cinnamon sugar, or whatever that one is called. But yeah, I like that one there. Visa V16 on YouTube. Morning, Joe. Arkansas starting pitching doing what they do. Yep, that is true. That's been it's been a couple good days for Arkansas there. I know it's early, but Brent Iredale looks pretty darn good. Yeah, I've got him on my list of potential players of the day yesterday. A 2-home run game for Iredale. That's what you're looking for him. He's got that upside to be, maybe not an SEC player of the year type of player, but who knows? But certainly like a all SEC type of player. He's got that kind of upside. After 2 games, which SEC team should have some more sense of urgency? I'll go. I mean, Kentucky's game against Lipscomb is big today. They split the first 2 games on Friday. I get that it's a road series and yada yada, but like you don't want to come out and lose an opening weekend series against a team that we don't know how good they're going to be, right? Lipscomb is usually pretty solid. I think they won the regular season in that league in the ASUN a couple of years ago, but the RPI is not always good. It's sometimes it's pretty mediocre. And so if you're Kentucky, to kind of protect yourself against that, you really want to get that win today and win that series to protect yourself against Lipscomb being an RPI, I don't know, like 175, which isn't totally out of the question. And then suddenly that looks like a pretty bad series loss, even on the road. So that's a big one. Kentucky's got to come out with some urgency here. Hale State going for the sweep. Kobe Walker. Yep, that's right. Jeremy McCollum. Good. He says, glad to have you back, Joe. Glad to have you back, Jeremy. And go Hogs, he says. Jeremy Scott, Roll Tide, as usual. Jeremy Scott getting in here with his Roll Tide. Sean Miller says, does Chinook have a secret sponsor chat line? We can't see their comments. No, those are coming in on X. So if you're on YouTube, you won't be able to see those. Those are coming in from a different place. I have access to all of them in my little panel. Thoughts on Arkansas through 3 games, Jeremy asks. Well, the pitching has obviously lived up to it. I wouldn't read too much into Washington State playing them close, the exception of the second game, obviously. But then in the other 2 games, because I think Washington State is sneaky solid. I think they've done a pretty good job of dealing with the whole, like, the Pac-12 imploding in front of them. I think they've done a pretty good job of building a roster that in the face of that. I think they're well coached too. I know sometimes it's hard to tell who's well coached and who's not, but they seem like the type of team, and I've heard from people who would know that they are well coached. So I wouldn't be too worried about that maybe some wins have been closer than you might have thought. But I mean, the pitching has been every bit as good. And then you've seen some breakout offensive performances, which is what you're looking for. Iredale yesterday, I think, is the best example. But this early season for Arkansas is all about, hey, can we find dudes on offense, which has been the question for so much of the last couple of years for Arkansas is, do we have guys who can carry us and let the pitching do what it does? And I think you should be optimistic about that so far. We'll see. Long season, but that's kind of my early thoughts. Corey Griffin says Mississippi State bats were hot. Indeed. Ace Reese, first homer of the year to get the season started. Yeah, Ace Reese is a guy who, if you haven't heard, Houston transfer, a lot of buzz about him in the fall in the preseason. Battled some injuries at Houston last year. So if you look at the numbers, you're kind of like, little shrug, right? But he was battling some injuries there and is now fully healthy, feeling good. Really talented guy. Should be in for a big year. Jordan Shields, glad to have you back, Joe. Glad to have you back, Jordan, a commenter from last season. Tony and the boys have more depth than I've ever seen. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, we'll talk about it here shortly, but Levi Clark, a 3-for-3 game, a guy who, I don't mean this disrespectfully, but just because of their depth, felt like maybe an extra piece this year, maybe has a big, bright future, but maybe for this year, just an extra piece, and a dude goes out there and goes 3-for-3 with a double and a homer. So yeah, the depth, and of course the mound, some decent stuff from Marcus Phillips yesterday. We'll see. Obviously the stuff is very good, but they have depth on the mound as well. Maybe not as much proven stuff on the mound, but definitely a lot of talented depth. All right, scrolling here. Yes, Cinnamon Toast. Thank you, Chinook. The sweet Chinook Cedary brand. Let's see. I'm going to scroll through some here fast so I can get to some of our player of the day, pitcher of the day stuff. Here's an interesting one from Chinook. Which Mississippi coach needs to have a successful season more? That's Bianco and Lemonis. I don't mean to cop out on that question. I'll put it up there so that people can realize what I'm answering. Yeah, it depends on how you look at it, right? Because I think there's more urgency probably in Oxford for Coach Bianco, just because they didn't have the bounce back year that Mississippi State did last year, right? So from that standpoint, I think maybe it's more Bianco, but you could make an argument for Lemonis though too, because he doesn't have, yes, he has the national title, and I'm not downplaying that, but Coach Bianco has 2 decades of goodwill banked up in Oxford. And yes, it's gone a little sideways the last couple of years, but that guy is Ole Miss baseball. If you're unfamiliar, go look at Ole Miss's history before Bianco got there, and it's pretty much non-existent. So there is some banked up goodwill there that Lemonis just doesn't have, because Lemonis is not, he's a newer coach. He's not, kind of like he doesn't have that favorite son status. and perhaps he'll get there. But obviously, it's just different. So that's an interesting question. Like, I think you can look at it both ways. I think the answer is both. They both need to have a successful season, and that'll be something interesting to watch. Yeah, ask me again in April, and maybe I'll have a little bit better idea there. Oklahoma rotation looks to be really good. Yeah, I mean, the Witherspoon brothers, Malachi was excellent yesterday. Kyson, obviously, we know what he's about. If you can get Cam Johnson kind of straightened out, I mean, he was fine. It's not like Cam Johnson imploded, but 5 walks for him the other night. But the stuff is obviously electric. So if you can round him into form as time goes on, yeah, Oklahoma's going to be a tough customer if they can find enough offense. And against Lehigh, and who knows how good Lehigh will or won't be, but against Lehigh, the offense has been just fine. Like they've taken care of business. So, yeah, if this rotation is what we've seen the last couple of days, then yeah, Oklahoma's going to be in every SEC series. They're not going to be overmatched in really particularly any series. There are going to be days when they get outslugged, I think. But as long as the pitching holds up, I think that's a trade they're just going to be willing to make this year. All right. Let's move on to Sean says 7 run rules in the conference yesterday. Yeah, thank you for putting numbers on that. But yeah, that for the SEC, that's kind of what you want. Obviously you're not going to get that, although Texas did put it on Ole Miss yesterday. That's typically not what you're going to get in like the Globe Life tournament, that level of game. But yeah, for these games against mid majors and what have you, like, yeah, you do want those run rules where you can just get some freshmen some work. You can be done it quicker in 7 innings and a couple hours and then move on with your life. That's definitely what you want to see there. Okay. Joshua, I see your question there about Auburn's offense. I will get to that here momentarily. So hitter of the day nominees, I'll quickly run through these since had a lot of good questions and I want to prioritize the questions. So I'll run through these hitters of the day pretty quickly. I probably won't do as much reading of the stats. I also know it's very hard to keep up with. I'm just sitting here reading stats after stats after stats. But some of the names I had on my list: Daniel Dickinson, another big game; Brody Donay for Florida, getting a little bit of the Cags treatment. They were pitching around him a little bit because Donay has come out piping hot this season. That would obviously be huge for Florida if he can be a consistent contributor throughout the entire season. Big day for him. Hayden Yost for Florida, a 4-for-5 game. You'll take that. I mentioned Levi Clark with his 3-for-3 day. Hunter Inslee, 2-for-2 with a double, a homer, drove in 4 runs. Garrett Staton from Alabama, the Samford transfer, 6 runs batted in. We mentioned Brent Iredale. A couple of Oklahoma hitters, Jason Walk, Easton Carmichael. Those two went a combined 5-for-5 yesterday. Carmichael hit a triple and a home run. Jace Laviolette, I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's pretty good. He was 2-for-4 with 2 home runs. Hayden Schott for A&M was 3-for-5. Brock Daniels of Mizzou in that big win for Mizzou over UConn was 3-for-4. My player of the day, though, was Robbie Burnett for Georgia, and I wrote about him. So, again, I'm maybe a little biased on this because I was there and I saw him and I wrote about him. But go check it out on the site if you haven't read it yet. I wrote about how he gives the Georgia offense a different look. The dude can really run. He's on base all the time. He reached base in his first 10 plate appearances this season. Yesterday went 3 for 6. With 4 hit by pitches, a walk, and 3 stolen bases. He's 7 for 7 in stolen bases. And that's what's interesting to me about what he brings to the table is Georgia doesn't run. Or at least they haven't. Last year they stole maybe 30 some odd bases, 32 bases, something like that. But if you go back, that's the most they've stolen since COVID, basically. They've had seasons of 20 and 21 stolen bases. The highest single season total for a player is 10. That Mason LaPlante in 2023, 10 stolen bases. He might get that today. Like they've got one more game against UNCW today, and he might get that today. He might get to 10. The school record is 31. Like that seems like light work, even if his pace is going to slow down, obviously, but that seems like that could be easy for him to get to. So that's just a different dynamic for Georgia. They're not, and they're going to have to. They're not going to be able to wait for the 3-run homer quite as much. They've still got some power, but they don't have Condon, they don't have Collins, and those guys combined for 50 some odd home runs last year. So it's just going to have to be a little bit different. And Robbie Burnett gives them that different element. Tom Reardon on X says, like how he plays the game. Totally agree. Plays with his hair on fire. Hard-nosed guy too. Plays a good second base. Like he's a guy who has some versatility defensively. He was more of an outfielder the last couple of years at UNC Asheville, but he's playing second base. He and Colby Branch up the middle for Georgia. Really solid duo there. So you like that if you're Georgia, that you're able to plug him in at second base, which was a position of some need for them. So that worked out well there for them. So Robbie Burnett, hitter of the day. Pitcher of the day. Some candidates here. Anthony Ianson for LSU pitched well in his first start for the Tigers there. Jake Clemente of Florida. The numbers for Clemente aren't necessarily don't necessarily stand out. It's 6 innings, 3 runs, 2 earned. But what was impressive about that is he gave up a 3 spot early in that game and then flushed it and then got through 6 innings. Rather than letting things get sideways on him, and then he kind of just throws his hands up and gets frustrated or whatever. He fought back, ends up getting 6 innings for his team, and Florida ends up running away with that game. Strikes out 8, didn't walk anybody. So you just like, for a guy who's a new weekend starter, you like that against a team like Air Force that, at least on paper, you would think you'd just kind of mow through, although we know Air Force is a pretty good program. To see him fight back like that, I think was impressive and something that he's going to need, especially as they get into SEC play, that mentality. Matthew Becker for South Carolina. South Carolina took care of Sacred Heart after a relatively close game on Friday. They really just blew out yesterday. Matthew Becker, 5 one-hit innings, 9 strikeouts. Good start there. Malachi Witherspoon, mentioned him earlier. 5 strong innings, gave up 1 run to Lehigh. But the pitcher of the day is Luke Harrison for Texas against Ole Miss. 6 1/3 shutout innings, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts. And when you consider injury in 2023, last year an ERA over 9, didn't really know what to expect for Luke Harrison, but through 1 start, you'll take it. So, you mainly just wanted to see him show that he could get stretched out and that he could give you some length in his starts. And, so you'd take 6 1/3 in May. You'll especially take it in February when guys are just kind of getting ramped up. So big start for him in a big win for Texas over Ole Miss yesterday at Globe Life Field. Okay, some comments here. I mentioned Joshua's comment on YouTube. How concerned are you about Auburn's offense after the first couple of games? I mean, I guess you have to say a little, right? Because it's Holy Cross. Shout out to Worcester County, Massachusetts. Yeah, a little. I'll just say a little. I like the chances of I'm confident they will break out of it, but I don't think you can just wave that away and say that's nothing, especially after the way last year went. And last year, the offense wasn't the main problem for Auburn. It was injuries and on the mound, and the mound has been pretty good, for Auburn the first couple of days. But I do think, just based on last year having gone sideways on them, I don't blame Auburn fans for being a little bit leery of, why don't we look like I think we'd look? And, you drop a game yesterday to Holy Cross that you didn't expect. So I get it. Still bullish on a breakout there. Not only do they have proven guys like McMurray and Ike Irish, et cetera, but I think they're more dynamic than they were. I think they've got some guys who can do some different things. And so that tends to help offenses be less it makes them more slump proof, if you will. Doesn't mean you can't slump, but it makes it less likely. So let's see how today goes, and then we'll kind of readjust as the week goes on. But yeah, Joshua, you've made me think, but I just don't think you can sit here and say, no, I'm not concerned at all. Just given that, Auburn's trying to prove that they're a different team than they were last year. What team surprised you from Chinook there? I mean, I think the Mizzou win after getting blown out by Penn State. I mean, they scored 11 runs against UConn. And, and UConn's never as good in February as they are in May. We get that because they really haven't been outside much in the Connecticut wintertime to practice. So they tend to get off to slow starts. But still, talented team. And to score 11 runs, I think that's impressive for me anyway. Carl Dunn says, Bear Jones still good at baseball. Agreed, Carl. That's a real hot take there that Bear Jones is good at baseball. I'm with you though. Derek Curiel is a good player to look out. Is a player to look out for. Agree. There's a lot of talented freshmen at LSU this year, but Curiel's the one that I think has the best chance of being a guy who is an immediate impact superstar. I really think he's the guy there. So I think you've hit on the right guy. I think there, Carl. Moonshine, my buddy from last year. He was a recruiting commenter last year. Any new ugly shirts this year? I don't know if I have any new ugly ones. I'm sure by the time the season's over, Moonshine, I will have an ugly shirt on the show. I wore one of the old ugly shirts yesterday. Moonshine used to give me crap for my patterned polo shirts, all in good fun. But yeah, rest assured, Moonshine, there will be other ugly shirts as time goes on. Trey Stover on X, Burnett, McCarthy play hard, not easy to pitch to. No ABs were taken off and great competitors. Yeah, Nolan McCarthy, big day yesterday. I didn't mention him on my hitter of the day candidates, but he could have been on that list as well. He's such a big addition for Georgia, guy who played in Omaha last year for Kentucky, good defender in center field, a really tough out at the plate. A huge addition there. Not as flashy as maybe some of the other additions, but just a really good competitor. They are, I'm sure, thrilled to have him. Okay, Sean Miller. This is a good thing to end on here. Games of the day: Irvine versus Vandy. I agree. Yeah, that should be interesting, especially after Irvine did what they did to Nebraska a couple days ago. I didn't see what they did yesterday, Sean. So if you know, you can put it in the chat there. But I didn't see Irvine's score from yesterday. But Ole Miss trying to bounce back versus Clemson. I agree on that one. Certainly, that's going to be big for them. Again, I don't want to get too caught up on the results of Ole Miss. I just want to see how they compete. But after yesterday getting kind of blown off the field by Texas, I do think it's big that they come out and at least show something against Clemson. Which, Clemson is yesterday, they rolled to a relatively routine win over Arizona and looked really, really impressive doing it. So that's not going to be an easy task for Ole Miss, but I think it's important they come out and show something there after yesterday's game didn't go the way they wanted there. Oklahoma State and Texas. Yeah, I think that's the one I'm looking forward to most there. Both coming off of big wins, Oklahoma State over Louisville, and then Texas obviously over Ole Miss. And then you ask any sleepers. I mean, I mentioned it earlier. I think that Kentucky game, it's just so important not to drop that series if Kentucky wants to be serious about, maybe not being as good as they've been the last couple of years. I think that's a standard because of the turnover on the roster. That's a standard that it's not fair to hold them to. But if they want to be a regional type team again, you don't want to risk losing this series and Lipscomb not being particularly good as the season goes on. Sean mentions Irvine rolled New Mexico 18-4. Yeah, so Irvine's coming out playing well. So yeah, that Irvine-Vandy game I think is really intriguing. You got to be prepared to play defense against Irvine. They're going to put the ball in play. They're good athletes. They're going to do some typical West Coast stuff. So you've got to be ready to play defense. If you don't play defense well, you're going to have a tough day against Irvine. One last thing, Joel says thoughts on Case Evans and Maverick Rizzi. Impressed, small sample size, obviously, but impressed. I think Rizzi touched 99 yesterday, something like that. Yeah, looking forward to seeing more. Haven't seen them live yet, but definitely looking forward to seeing more. Consider me intrigued. So yeah, that's a couple of talented guys there. All right. We're 28 minutes in, so we're going to call it there. Thank you for joining me on Sunday's edition of Weekend Waypoints. A lot of great questions. That's my favorite part of this deal, is answering your questions live on YouTube or on X. So keep those coming every weekend. Again, if you're new to this, we do this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. No official start time because, frankly, it kind of depends on Joe's travel schedule and how late the game the night before was and how early Joe gets up to do it. So no set start time there. But I always try to give you a heads up when I do it, and you can always watch it back after the fact. The link on YouTube and obviously on X will still be there. So if you miss it, you can watch it back and still get your fix there. So, all right, folks, enjoy the Sunday of baseball out there. I know I will. As I look out my window, it's cloudy, but I'm hopeful the rain is going to hold off for Georgia and UNCW to play again this afternoon, and I will be there for that. Very much looking forward to that once again. All right, folks, enjoy the baseball. I'll talk to you next weekend.